Hello and welcome to Salute Your Sports. Kamen Entchev here with Tom Casselman. Ready for an awesome show today. We got the NFL draft recap. So much drama, so much quarterbacks getting taken early, and one that wasn't taken early. We got ourselves the NBA playoffs. Lakers, Warriors. My heart, Tom. My heart. It's Curry versus LeBron. This could not be. What I've been having like a midlife crisis over the NBA playoffs because I just don't know who I want to win. I don't know who's going to win. That's going to be a lot of fun to talk about. Of course, Eastern Conference as well. Also in the West, Nuggets and Suns, betting locks, sports trivia. So much stuff to get through today. We'll also talk about Lamar Jackson's big deal. Cannot wait to get started. How are you doing today, Tom?
I am doing fantastic, but not as fantastic as some of the winners of the NFL draft. I mean, this might be hyperbole common, but I think the Panthers got the steal of the draft with Bryce Young. Only the fact that they only had to spend one pick to get him. He's worth 2 first-round picks. That's in a round, of course. But let's start there with some of the teams that had the best NFL drafts. And I know it's early to be talking about grades. And of course, we see guys, the Seattle Seahawks were panned the year that they took Russell Wilson. And what was that, the 3rd round, 4th round? I think it was 3rd round. And, it was panned as being an awful pick, waste of a 3rd round pick, goes on to be the best quarterback in that franchise's history. And it's not particularly close when we have that sort of conversation. So,
you mean Jim Zorn? You're not even giving up to Jim Zorn? I'm just kidding, Tom.
It's one of those things where it's, we like the immediacy of the moment. So, kind of whatever criterion that you want to use, what would you say are some of the best moves, the teams that had the best drafts on draft weekend? If you want to keep it to just the first night and some of the craziness we saw, I think we saw a record number of trades as well in this NFL draft. There was tons of activity. Kamen, who are a couple of your winners for this year's draft?
Yeah, I'm keeping it to more of the big time players early on. Again, some of these late round guys. I did call Russell Wilson being really good a few years back when we did this in college, but I went more with the top level talent. I didn't really look at the 6th, 7th round steals as much this time around. I know I usually do that. But for me, the best draft was hands down the Houston Texans. I mean, no doubt about it. The talk was, are they going to get the quarterback, CJ Stroud at number 2, or are they going to go Will Anderson defense? And guess what? They got both. They got both. Houston, for me, I know he said no grades. A+ from Kamen Entchev for the Texans. I think Will Anderson is probably the best player in this draft. It's either him or Bryce Young for me. He's the most sure thing. 27.5 sacks the last 2 years. Back-to-back SEC Defensive Player of the Year. Back-to-back Nagurski Trophy Award. Top defensive player in the country. This guy will not miss. He's a great pick for the Texans at number 3. At number 2, they got their quarterback, CJ Stroud, one of the 2 can't-miss QBs in this draft for me, him and Bryce Young. Great arm, great touch, great accuracy. All this talk about Ohio State quarterbacks not succeeding in the NFL. In my opinion, Tom, he's the best of the bunch. He's the best Ohio State quarterback ever. I know that's not saying a ton necessarily because, again, we haven't had that many great in the NFL, but I think he's unlike these other guys. He's got a better arm. He's got better touch. He's fantastic. 85 passing touchdowns the last 2 years, more than 8,000 pass yards. This guy can be an all-pro player. Also, obviously, Will Anderson is likely going to be an all-pro player. A couple other teams I thought that did really well. The Pittsburgh Steelers. I thought they, really hit on some knees. Broderick Jones with the 14th pick. Great offensive tackle from Georgia. You draft the Georgia kids, you really can't go wrong, right? They have Kenny Pickett, young quarterback, Najee Harris, young running back. Their offensive line last season, a little bit of a concern. They addressed the need. And they also got a pretty good cornerback, Joey Porter Jr. That is the son of Joey Porter, the former linebacker for them. And then they also got a good corner. Speaking of a steal, I did have one written down. Purdue's Corey Trice, 7th round pick also to help the defense. So they're kind of getting back to that Steeler way. I know they drafted some, George Pickens last year, talented receiver. But what do we think about the Steelers? We think of running the ball and defense. They got an offensive lineman. They got defense. Steelers did well. getting back to the Steeler way. And actually, Tom, I do think the Carolina Panthers are a steal for this draft. For me, it's really down to Bryce Young. I didn't really look too much into the other guys they picked, but I think Bryce Young is the best player in this draft. I think he's a generational quarterback. They've been needing one. They haven't had one since a healthy Cam Newton. So I think them trading for that first overall pick, getting Bryce Young, I think is a great pickup because they got their guy. You can't really win a Super Bowl, can't win a lot without a great quarterback. There are a few exceptions, but for the most part, teams with great quarterbacks do really well. I think in a weak division, the Panthers have the best quarterback in that division. They are positioned to win the division, and I think getting Bryce Young is a huge get for them. So they had a great draft just because they got the best player in the draft, and they went in with what, the ninth pick before this whole thing started. I know they traded a while back with the Bears. It was a while ago. But them also getting Bryce Young is good because there was a lot of question marks. What are they going to do with this pick? As much as I like CJ Stroud, I
Yeah.
like Bryce Young even better. So hats to the Panthers on a great draft in Carolina.
Yeah, I mean, Steelers were one of the teams on my list, if not at the top of the list. I really liked what the Seattle Seahawks did, going with Witherspoon, who
Yes,
was, a little bit of a local guy going to
Illinois.
Illinois, but certainly, one of the top two cornerbacks in the draft. It just depended on if you wanted him or Christian Gonzalez, who I think is a bit of a steal later
The
on in the first round
Patriots.
for the Patriots. But then going out and getting Jackson Smith and Jigba and really rounding out what now looks like a dynamic passing attack. I mean, we're used to think
Mm-hmm.
about the Seattle Seahawks and sure, let Russ cook, but they won the Super Bowl on the back of a really good defense. Getting Devin Witherspoon certainly fills
Marshawn
that, but also
Lynch.
a good running game with Marshawn Lynch. And the Seahawks address that as well. They already have Kenneth Walker the third, picking up Zach Charbonnet. It's a bit of a headache for fantasy football managers, but in real life football, you now have back to back years, 2 second round pick running backs who are, by all accounts, really solid to really good, depending on what you want to kind of use as that scale. And then Jackson Smith and Jigba, getting him at the 20th pick in the draft to be your
Fantastic.
slot receiver. You've got Lockett, who can fly down the field. You've got DK Metcalf, who is just a physical specimen, one of the most chiseled guys in the NFL. Tons of speed on the outside. And then you get Smith and Jigma, who are not necessarily the fastest guy, but all of his traits really, really quick, really, really good route runner, perfect for the slot. So that rounds out an offense. The only thing where I might ding Seattle a little bit is not addressing that quarterback of the future, not picking up some sort of
Don't need
developmental
it.
guy later on in the draft.
Gino.
They're showing a lot of faith in Geno
They
Smith
should.
and the work that he did last season, and in trusting him not just this year, but perhaps the next couple of years as well. I kind of thought that they'd be going with a longer term. Here's a backup guy who might be
No.
good in a couple of years, but they're going with Geno for now. So Seahawks,
Love it.
I thought, had a phenomenal draft. Philadelphia Eagles, I thought, had a really good draft as well. And I share your concerns about Jalen Carter and the motor that he has. Um, you can. I'm not going to try to get into how much at fault he is for that fatal car crash when they were driving really really fast that caused the death of a teammate and another staffer. But at the very least, it has to take a toll on him mentally and emotionally. Whether that may be survivor's guilt or something along those lines. He had a really poor pre-draft process, or he wasn't really available at the combine all that much. Had a pretty poor pro day, but he goes to what I think is the best situation. And everybody was saying talent wise, Jalen Carter is perhaps the best player in this draft. He has the highest ceiling of anyone in this draft and how he can be really special. He needs to be in a good environment, though. And the Philadelphia Eagles, with basically like Thanos, assembling the Infinity Stones for that Georgia
D
Bulldogs
line.
defense gauntlet, getting Nolan Smith, an absolute steal at the 30th pick in the draft, a teammate who really kind of mentored Jalen Carter. I think that the Eagles are in a great spot where they don't need Carter to be the savior of the defense. They just need him to be a really good piece, and I think that they have the environment to help him be in a good spot to realize his talent, because that's kind of something we don't necessarily talk about. We talk about, oh, who got good players. It's also what players ended up in good situations, and I think Carter and the Eagles fit that for sure. And then outside of round two, I really liked what the Chicago Bears did with their draft as well. I thought they could have picked a couple different guys at that second round, late second round, where they went defensive tackle a couple of times. There are a couple different names I would have slotted it instead. But I certainly think that they had a really solid draft, especially addressing some offensive positions, getting Roshan Johnson, getting Tyler Scott in the fourth round, I thought were good value picks as well. So uh, a couple of really good winners. I'll throw in really quickly Arizona Cardinals as well, trading back, still getting their top left tackle and picking up what can potentially be a really good Houston Texans first round pick next year. I thought that was a really strong move and a strong draft as well.
Yeah, real quick, just to counter a couple points or agree slash disagree. I think
Mhm.
Jackson Smith and Jigba, I'll talk about him in a segment upcoming, so I'm not going to repeat myself twice, but I thought that was a great pick for Seattle. He was actually better in college than Olave or Garrett Wilson. I'll have some numbers in the upcoming segment. The only reason I didn't put them there, because I was actually eyeing them as well, Tom, is because they did get a running
Mhm.
back in the second round. Kenneth Walker
Mm.
is such a good player. I know people like two running backs, but that dude is good enough to be the one bell cow. That's the one concern I had why I didn't have their draft this high. Eagles I was considering as well, but again, I'm not the highest on Jalen Carter, but at least I got him at number
Sure.
9 as opposed to like number 2 or 3, which some folks had him going. For me, it was production. I know D tackle, it's not an end, it's not an edge rusher, but only 3 sacks last season. Didn't do great at the combine, facing adversity. But again, I don't wish ill upon anyone. Hopefully, he figures things out. But yeah, overall, those teams had some good drafts for sure.
Who came up a little bit short in your opinion? Because I've got a couple of teams, one on a technicality, and I think a couple reached a little bit.
Yeah, so I actually ironically have the Green Bay Packers and New York Jets are my two that I put down because they had that massive
Wow.
blockbuster trade for Aaron
Sure.
Rodgers. And I know neither team capitalized in the draft for me. I think the Packers reached. They took Lucas Van Ness at 13th overall, an Iowa player that didn't even start in college. I know he's a talented guy. I know he got a lot of snaps. There was actually some
Mhm.
number that he got more snaps than the starter, but still considerably less snaps than most of the other big time players. So we had a decent amount of sacks, but nothing crazy. Just worries me a little bit. If you're not good enough to start at Iowa, how are you the 13th overall pick? That's just for
Yeah.
me. And then I thought they actually kind of reached in their second round as well. They took Luke Musgrave with their second round pick, a tight end. He only played 2 games this last season.
Mhm.
He only has 633 receiving yards and 2 receiving touchdowns in his college career in 20 games. So this guy really didn't do a lot in college. I know they took guys early based on potential and not production. But you know me, I'm all about potential and production. And I don't like these guys who don't produce that much in college and all of a sudden they're going to be great in the pros. I know systems, whatever. I mean, I'll be wrong on some of them, but on average, not that often is a guy who's not that good in college turns out to be a great player. So I thought the Packers reached with both of their first 2 picks. So that's why I have them down. Then I have the Jets. Ironically, I think they kind of did what the Packers did to Rodgers all these years. I mean, they didn't draft him a receiver. That was the issue. I know Garrett Wilson's good, but ideally, Garrett Wilson, if you're going to be a contending team, a playoff team, that's your number 2 receiver. I mean, he could be a number 1,
Mm.
but if he's the number 1 receiver, you're probably a mediocre team. He's right around like 15th or so best receiver in the league. That's what an average team, an average 1 receiver. I would like to see them, even if he is number 1, I would like them to have a clear number 2. Brees Hall, really good running back. But again, Rodgers, Garrett Wilson, and who else? I mean, they don't really have very good receivers there with New York. So if they're going to spend all this money, make this massive trade for Rodgers, who, I mean, let's be honest, Tom, his window is closing. He could even retire after 1 year. So it's
Sure.
like it's
Yeah.
got to be a win now mentality. I know they just picked up Randall Cobb, but again, Randall Cobb, this isn't 2011. This isn't
No.
2014, Tom. It's 2023. So I was
Yeah.
not really happy they didn't get a receiver early. They went with Will McDonough, the 15th overall pick for them. 5 sacks last season, not bad. But again, the Jets defense is what works. They went with a defensive pick with their first pick in the draft. I did not like that. I thought the offense they should have gone with. And then I think they got a center in the second round, and he wasn't even an all Big Ten guy. Joe Tippmann, Wasn't like a great college player again. I know they're projecting to the next level. I know there's a lot of good Big Ten centers, but did not like what the Jets did. I thought they should have gone receiver in the first couple of rounds to help out Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, those are two, I think, perfectly viable picks for teams that left a little bit on the table, so to speak. For me, one team is the Washington Commanders, largely coming down to their selection for first round pick. At the 16th pick, they chose Emmanuel Forbes, a cornerback out of Mississippi State, when Christian Gonzalez out of Oregon was still available, went the very next pick to the New England Patriots. I think Christian Gonzalez. He was in that conversation 1-2 with Devin Witherspoon. The fact that he slid that far, and then you pass on arguably one of the two best cornerbacks for a guy who's a little bit further down that list. Maybe they have different plans in mind. Maybe they think Forbes is better at one thing in
Well,
particular
they
for their
do.
defense or another. But that's something I think is going to be something we look back on as a mistake. I think that the Detroit Lions head puzzling
Yeah.
choices in the first round, where you're going with Jameer Gibbs, who is a good running back, but he's not
Hmm.
Bijan Robinson level. Going with him at 12, and then Jack Campbell, an inside linebacker. Those are two positions that, for right or for wrong, are devalued in the modern NFL, where you can
Sure.
get good contributors at those positions later on in the draft. If you're the Detroit Lions, you probably could have gotten Jameer Gibbs in the second round, if we're being perfectly honest. And Jack
Sure.
Campbell, you could have gotten probably in the third. So, I mean, yeah, go ahead, get your guys. I think that those were both significant reaches. And then on the technicality, I'll say the Miami Dolphins. You only have 4 picks in the draft total because they had that tampering issue with Tom Brady and Sean Payton. They had to forfeit a first round pick.
They
That
got
doesn't get a
neither.
pass from me. This is a team that is in a win now window. I mean, I know Tua is a younger quarterback. Obviously, Jalen Waddle only a couple years in the league so far, but you need to give reinforcements to a team that nothing is promised. Tomorrow's not promised to anybody in the NFL. Progress is not always linear as far as contend for a wild card, contend for the division, contend for the Super Bowl. It's a temperamental league, and so when you're not able to supplement your team because you've made questionable choices, and this is one of many that the Miami front office and ownership have made, that's something where I got to ding them as well.
I had the
But
Lions
let's go
too,
with
Tom. Real
yeah.
quick, the Lions I had written down as well. I didn't actually. I have them in the next segment, but I thought the Lions are completely right on them. That's another one I
Mhm.
definitely think is a good one because they both reached. You're right.
Yeah. So, and talk about reaches. Let's talk about steals versus reaches. We'll just do a couple of names on this one, and like you said, not going to go super duper deep on a ton of things because for casual fans, outside the first couple of rounds, historically, it's all dart throws to begin with. But if you are willing to plant your flag on somebody fourth round or later and say this is my guy, absolutely go ahead and do it.
Yeah, I've got a couple of late first round, early second round picks. So I know I've picked fourth rounders in the past. Russell Wilson, I think, was maybe third round, but he was a guy I was really high on. That did work out. I'm huge on production, Tom. I've got a couple of names written down. Michael Meyer from Notre Dame, 809
Yep,
yards,
that's one.
nine touchdown catches last year in 12 games. He was projected by some as a late first round pick, and they got him in the second round. 35th overall. Really good pick for the Raiders. They have Darren Waller is obviously leaving. They have Devontae Adams. They've got Josh Jacobs, now Jimmy G. Michael Meyer, very, very good tight end. He's not necessarily like the greatest athlete, but he's just a really good football player. I think he's going to be potentially a Pro Bowler down the line, top 10 tight end in the league. You get that in the second round, you're doing pretty good. And then I had Jackson Smith and the Jigba. I mean, he
Mhm.
is fantastic. You look at 2 seasons ago, Tom, 1,606 receiving yards. Same team as Garrett Wilson, who had 1,058 receiving yards. Same team as Chris Olave, who had 936. He was considerably more productive than both, and those were the two best rookie receivers last season. Shows you how good he is. Just ask Utah State. Well, what about 300 yards in that Rose Bowl game? This guy is a
Mhm.
clean route runner. He's a very good player. And Seattle's kind of got like Kind of like what I was asking for Garrett Wilson, like DK Metcalf, Jackson Smith-Njigba. They're both number one wide receivers. If you're a true contender, ideally you want them as a number two. But then they have Tyler Lockett. They have like three guys who can argue are a one or a two, and that's a really good receiving core, really good slot receiver. This guy is going to be a top 10 receiver in the NFL for the next 10 years. Jackson Smith-Njigba at 20th overall. Only reason why he went that late, he barely played this last season. Reports are he's healthy. If he's healthy, no reason to think why he shouldn't be great. He was a Heisman front runner before the season started. He's a very good receiver, very good pick for the Seahawks. And actually, I originally had the Lions written down, but the reason why I did remove them from my bad drafts is because I think they had a very weird draft. They had some really bad picks and some really good picks. One that I think is really good is Brian Branch, 45th overall pick, set safety out of Alabama.
One of my picks.
First team All-American last season, one of the best tackle rates in the country. The guy rarely missed a tackle. This guy's a safety that could do everything. He'll tackle you. He'll get some sacks, 14 tackles for loss, had a couple picks, 3 sacks this last season, did a little bit of everything. I'm not going to say he's going to be as good as this guy, but when I thought of him and I was thinking of safeties who do a little bit of everything, they're not necessarily that like 10 pick guy, but they're so good at tackling. They're so solid at everything. I was thinking like Brian Dawkins as a player comp. I know. He's got a long way to go. I'm not saying he's going to be.
Yeah.
I know he's not going to be Brian Dawkins, but definitely a really good pick for the Lions. Actually, that's exactly why I removed them from my bad drafts. Because originally I was like, yeah, they reached here, they reached there, but with this dude, they got a baller.
Absolutely. I've already mentioned Christian Gonzalez and Nolan Smith going to the Patriots and Eagles respectively as steals within the first round. I think a couple of later round guys to keep an eye on. You mentioned for the New York Jets, they went out and got this running back named Israel Benaconda, who was phenomenal at Pitt. He had like 20-something touchdowns last season. And Brees Hall, good, talented running back, but still recovering from a knee injury. Typically that takes like a year and a half to 2 years to actually get back to full form. Because if you think about J.K. Dobbins, I suppose a couple of years ago that he tore up his knee, it wasn't until kind of the tail end of last season that he actually was able to literally and figuratively get his legs underneath him. So look for Benaconda to have an immediate impact in New York this year. I think that one of the guys that I wanted the Bears to take with one of their late second round picks, actually a Northwestern kid. So, Chicago's Big Ten team. And I'm pulling up the pronunciation guide on this one because I'm going to need it. Eddie Tamiwa Edibariwe.
I love it.
Yeah, Eddie Barre.
I'll take your word
out of
for
Northwestern. He played on the edge at Northwestern, but profiles as a 3 technique, which is that's the linchpin position in the defense that the Chicago Bears are running. The cover 2, not straight up cover 2 nowadays, but a hybrid of it. I thought he was going to be a great pick. He was right in the Bears' backyard. They were able to scout him a lot. I think it says something that he went to Indianapolis, another team that geographically is pretty close and also runs a similar defense to what the Chicago Bears do. They were able to get him later on in the draft. I thought he would have been a much better pick for the Bears in that late second round. I think the Colts got a good value with him, although I know with defensive tackle, that's a little bit more insider football, so to speak. And then Tyler Scott, I thought was a great pick because he projects to be kind of similar to a Tyler Lockett, which if the Bears have a Tyler Lockett that they got in the 4th round, that's a pretty good pick in my book. He's a little bit undersized, but has a ton of speed, a ton of production coming out of Cincinnati. I think that he'll be a really good receiver in the NFL as well. But, it's now going to be rookie mini camps and OTAs, and we'll get into the preseason where guys are going to show up in training camp. We're going to start to see a little bit of who's going to be a real talent going on and who's going to be maybe a mistake pick. We'll kind of learn on some of these guys a little bit early. Somebody that we definitely have a big history with and is finally answered a big question mark out in Baltimore. Lamar Jackson and the Ravens have agreed. Oh, go ahead.
The busts. I want to get through the bust. Did you have bust written down?
Oh, did I have a bust written down?
I have a
Go
few
ahead,
written
go for
down.
busts.
Yeah, busts. So first off, real quickly, again, I don't wish anything ill upon anyone, but I thought Will Levis sliding out of the first round was good. I think he's overrated personally. I don't think he's a great quarterback. I don't even think he's a steal for the Titans because this guy's got bust written all over him. So it was actually cool to see that some of these teams saw what I saw in Will Levis, which is a guy that's just not a very good quarterback. He's got a big arm, he's got potential, but he's got not much else, in my opinion. Anthony Richardson, for me, is my biggest bust, number 4 overall. I
Mm.
think the Indianapolis Colts are getting themselves a guy who had a 53.8% completion percentage in college, 17 touchdowns, 9 picks last season, 24 TDs, 15 picks for his career. Not a very productive guy. He's going to be okay at running the ball. We know that, but not high on this kid. Obviously, I could be completely wrong. He's got the arm talent, he's got the athleticism, but I just don't see Anthony Richardson being a good enough passing quarterback in the NFL. So number 4, I know they need a quarterback, but there was 2 quarterbacks in this draft, and if you weren't going to get those 2, you're probably not going to get someone who's going to be a legitimate NFL starter. I mean, look, Richardson will get some starts because he's the 4th overall pick, but I think there's 2 starting quarterbacks in this draft, maybe 3 when Hendon Hooker, maybe, but there's 2 that you definitely really like, and the Colts did not get one of those 2. Lucas Van Ness, I talked about him earlier, 13th
Mhm.
overall pick for the Packers, didn't even start in college. Just seems like a reach for me. And then we did just talk about him, Jahmyr Gibbs, running back at number 12 for the Lions, 746 rush yards 2 years ago with Georgia Tech, 926 this last year for Alabama. Again, he's a good player, but 12th overall pick at the running back spot definitely seemed like a reach for Detroit.
Yeah, and then we've already talked about a couple other guys. I skipped over this on my list, but you mentioned, Will McDonald, the 4th, going to the Jets at that 15th pick. I thought that was a little bit, or no, 13 because they swapped. I thought that was a little bit rich. And then let's see, who else did I have on the list? Yeah, I mentioned Emmanuel Forbes as well, going to the Commanders instead of Christian Gonzalez, that being a little bit high for him as well. So we'll see. I mean, certainly, like I said, with training camp coming up, we're going to start to get early returns on these guys who might be, day one starters, immediate impacts, who might be somebody that says, hey, this is a bit of a project. And we'll see if they ever project to anything else. But now we'll move to Lamar Jackson and his new deal with the Baltimore Ravens. Last I checked, I don't think we actually have disclosed terms. I know it's been about a week since the deal was signed, but I don't even think we have necessarily what the guaranteed money is, what the signing bonus money is. But we know it's going to be a contract that's fairly similar in style, in quantity, as the Jalen Hurts contract that he signed with the Philadelphia Eagles. So in terms of getting this done, in terms of the end of this saga that's been going
Mm-hmm.
on for feels like a year plus now. I mean, I know like last year there was a little bit as well as far as contractual issues going. So now that this is all behind us, Kamen, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I mean, the reports are obviously you're right. It's not official 100%, but if you're reading
Hmm.
Adam Schefter, who is pretty trustworthy, I would say Adam
Sure.
Schefter is. He's going to be the highest paid quarterback on a per year basis. Not going to be the most guaranteed money, which is still Deshaun Watson. Not going to be the largest deal overall, which I think is Patrick Mahomes, based on
Hmm.
total money, years, etc. 10-year deal. But he's going to be the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. And I'm a little conflicted on this, to be honest with you, just because, I mean, I think the Ravens could have got him for less if they did this deal 2, 3 months ago. I really think
Mm.
they could have got him for less. The Jalen Hurts contract, the fact that that was so big hurt them. It's kind of like they're such in a weird spot, the Ravens are, because Lamar Jackson is probably a top 10 quarterback in the league, like that lesser, like that 7 to 10 range. They're not going to get someone better, so they should probably commit to him. But then again, I struggle with, is he the best quarterback in the league? He's not. He's the highest paid quarterback. I think Jalen Hurts is a lot closer to the best quarterback than Lamar Jackson. He is the former MVP. Again, that was kind of in a weak MVP year. Should he have got it? Should he not? That's another debate. So I'm a little torn. I do think ultimately they probably should commit the Lamar Jackson because they don't have a better option, Tom. And it is good that they're getting that deal in a way that they're not giving him all the guaranteed money that he's asking for. But what rubs me wrong with this deal is that I think they could have got him for less had they done this a few months ago, had they done this last year. I know the Watson deal really hurt them, really hurt quarterbacks, but the Hurts deal was really big. I mean, Jalen Hurts, I think he's the real deal, Tom, personally. I thought that Jalen Hurts was worth it, but again, based on one great year. So I'm a little bit torn on this Lamar Jackson. I could go either way. I lean towards, yes, it was the right move. They got to commit to this guy, but I think they could have got him for less. I could be wrong. I could be wrong. He was asking for a lot, but I feel like they could have done this earlier. They make such a big deal about this. They give him the franchise tag only to give him the money anyway, and it's almost one of these deals where they realize, like, well, we don't really have a better option. So it just feels like I can't say it's a complete win for them. I do think it's a win for Lamar Jackson, though. The guy did get paid after all that. The highest paid quarterback in the league on a per year basis. That's pretty good for him. There was actually a clip I saw, and I'm not the highest of Lamar Jackson, but I also think he's obviously a legitimate NFL starter, top 10 quarterback in the league. It was a draft day clip. Reporters asking him, would you play receiver? And he said, no, I'm a quarterback. And he is a quarterback. He's a little bit better passing quarterback than I've given him credit for. Again, he's still better at running, and the injuries are a concern. But overall, I would say, I guess it's a good deal. I mean, you got to pay your quarterback, right? That's the way the league works these days.
Absolutely. And I think that this is a more or less win-win for both sides. I think that if the Baltimore Ravens had been a little bit more proactive, they could have gotten this done with a lot less headache. And depending on who you want to believe, Lamar Jackson may have been playing a little bit more last season in terms of, he's got the security. He doesn't have to worry about his future type of situation. I think that it's absolutely a win for Lamar Jackson as well, because it's more than just the finances. It's also that he went out and he said, hey, we need to invest in wide receivers and actually having a more modern NFL passing game that doesn't just revolve around his legs and scrambling to make plays. I mean, there's a new offensive coordinator out in Baltimore. They draft Zay Flowers. They sign Odell Beckham Jr. They already have Mark Andrews, arguably the top tight end in the league, after Travis Kelce, basically. I think it's Mark Andrews. I don't know if there's anybody else in that conversation.
I think
Mark
Kittle's
Andrews
better.
is the clear second best.
I think Kittle's
okay,
better.
That's the discussion, yeah.
Yeah. Andrews may put up a little better numbers because he's a bigger focal point of the offense. But again, top three, I can go with that, Tom.
Yeah, exactly. And so better investment in the offense, a different offense that's going to have more of a downfield passing attack, so you don't have everything kind of gumming up the works with it being more of a run-first offense, and trying to unlock Lamar Jackson a little bit more as a passer so that his career isn't going a similar route of Cam Newton, where it has this meteoric peak early on, where Cam Newton's fresh in the league, he's Superman, he's rushing for all these touchdowns, but didn't really develop as a passer as much as he perhaps could have, in the sense that, like, he was so good at rushing and such a big weapon that Carolina made it about that. I think Lamar Jackson's taking steps with this negotiation and using the leverage that he had, because being the highest paid quarterback isn't necessarily about where he ranks in the league. It's the fact that his contract was coming up at this point in time.
Yeah, exactly. Good
and
point.
He maximized that. So I think it's a win for him. I think ultimately it's going to be a win for Baltimore as well, because they are going to be changing some things a little bit that I think can make them more competitive in a modern NFL, in the modern NFL offense. So I think a win-win for both sides on this.
Yeah, I guess. A win for Lamar, that's for sure.
All right, well, that's going to wrap up our NFL coverage. Just had NBA awards announced, and it is official. Joel Embiid is the MVP of the NBA. Larry Bird, I believe Bill Russell and Will Chamberlain remain the only three NBA players who have won three consecutive MVP awards. Nikola Jokic, for better or worse, will not be joining that lofty company. Did the NBA get it right in this vote, or did this feel more along the lines of, I mean, I'm going to say this a little bit tongue in cheek, but a
Storyline.
little bit political, quite frankly.
I'm a little bit torn on this one. It was such a close MVP race, and a lot of people folks were focused on Embiid and Jokic, but I think Giannis had a legitimate claim as well. Obviously, played a little bit less games, so I can see why he would be in that third spot. But you look at the numbers, Embiid led the league in scoring, but you look at the player efficiency rating (PER). Jokic 31.5, Embiid 31.4. That is awfully close. Stats like plus minus, though, win shares, Jokic had the best in the NBA. You add up points and assists. I know, obviously, Embiid had the most points, but you add all the assists that Jokic and even Giannis got a lot of assists. They actually probably accounted for a little bit more of their team's total points. So Giannis, by the way, plays better defense than both of those guys. Better 36, better numbers on a 36-minute basis. Giannis has played less minutes. I think Jokic still did end up playing the most games. So it's very close. It's one of these years where I'm not going to be furious if any one of these three guys get it. You know me, Tom. I get furious over certain things. I'm not furious here, but if it was my ballot, I would have put Jokic as my NBA MVP. His team had the 1 seed in the West. He had the best PER. He almost averaged a triple-double. I mean, he had his best season of the last 3 years. So he was really good. And I would actually lean Giannis maybe number 2 on that list and Embiid number 3 for me. Because, again, I think Giannis does a little bit more passing the ball, a little bit more defensively than Embiid. But all 3 were super close. It's one of these things, though, I knew Embiid was going to get it. Giannis won 2 in a row. Jokic wins 2 in a row. It's like it's this guy's turn. But Jokic won the MVP, was it last year when they were like a 6 seed? And they got the 1 seed this season. He was first in win shares, first in PER, had the best season of his career. I would have gone Jokic, but I don't think it's highway robbery. I don't think it's like it's obviously Jokic. I think it's close. It's very close. They're very good players. I would have personally gone Jokic, though, if I'm being honest, Tom.
Yeah, my top 2 MVP picks, and actually one of them wasn't even necessarily in the finalist running for this, and I'm going to lay out why.
Okay.
Since the NBA went to an 82 game schedule in 1960 in the 1967-68 season, Joel Embiid's 66 games played is by far the lowest percentage of
Yeah.
games played by a player to win an MVP. If you look at the total number of games, you'll see Karl Malone, you'll see LeBron James and Giannis Antetokounmpo. 98, 99, and 2010, 2011 were shortened by lockouts, and then the Giannis year was shortened by COVID. So those were all seasons where you're playing fewer than 82 games. Joel Embiid played 80% of his team games, and he is so valuable that the 76ers went 9-5, the exact, not exact same, but pretty much the same winning percentage as they had when he was in the lineup.
They looked pretty good without him in game 1.
And they averaged 116 points per game in that stretch where Joel Embiid wasn't playing.
It was a
Compare
pace
that
thing,
to,
by the way. Maxey, when he's not playing, Maxey scores more and he moves more with pace. But I know where you're going with this one. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the Milwaukee Bucks, 11-7 without Giannis this year. The Nuggets, 5-8 without Nikola Jokic. So you're talking about a guy who was a couple tenths of an assist away from averaging a triple-double on the season as a center, which is
Sure.
pretty outrageous. I mean, the
Right.
modern game centers pass more, and it also guards rebound a little bit more. But I would say Jokic should be the MVP. He only played 69 games. I would put right up there Jason Tatum. Celtics were 3-3 without him. He played
Jason
in
Tatum.
74 games this season. He played more games than these other guys did, averaging more than 30 points a game, averaging just shy of 9 rebounds a game. I mean, I think that he's a little bit more worthy of MVP because I understand in this era, body wellness, physical wellness is important. And of course, players are going to be sitting more than they used to. But you look at those
And they get
MVP
injured more anyway.
seasons, you look at those MVP seasons, I mean, Jordan, LeBron, Shaq, Nash, Kobe, Dirk, they're all playing 77, 78, 82 games in a season. I know it's the modern NBA, and I don't want guys to be playing when they're hurt and could exacerbate that into injuries. But I think that kind of changes the conversation about most valuable. I mean, Embiid, immensely talented player when he's on the court. The when he's on the court part, I think, is still a significant conversation. So for me, it goes Jokic and Jason Tatum simply because Tatum played as many games as he did. Embiid and Giannis, I think it was 66 games for Embiid. Giannis played 63 games or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I feel. I mean, like you said, this is just how the MVP race operates in the NBA. It isn't a truly just system, so to speak, but that's why I think a little bit egregious on Embiid, but not enough to really cause a giant kerfuffle.
One more point to add to this. The most underrated
Hmm.
player in the NBA by far, and I'll get to this in a upcoming segment, is James Harden. James Harden led
Hmm.
the league in assists. Again, I watched him in person, Tom, and he was better than Embiid and Giannis in person. He completely controls the game. He makes it so much easier for Joel Embiid. It's a lot easier when you can lead the league in points when your point guard puts the ball right where you need it. Like that pick and roll offense. I mean, he's
Hmm.
put in a shape in a position where his life is so much easier. He's playing with another all-star level player. Jokic doesn't have that. Jamal Murray is a very good player. Don't get me wrong. Jamal Murray is a very good player. He's not James Harden. He's just not James Harden. Giannis has Drew Holiday. Again, very good point guard. He's not James Harden. James Harden makes Embiid's life so much easier. And that almost, to me, almost devalues Embiid a little bit if we're talking about most valuable player. So, yeah, I agree. Jokic should have got it this year. Not as high on
So
Tatum as
playoff
you, Tom,
time.
though. But I do
Oh,
like your
I
point
mean,
about games. But you know how I'm
yeah, he
not
was
as
like
high as
he
Jason
finished like
Tatum.
fourth or fifth in the voting or something like that. Like he
Yeah,
just missed the cut for the final three,
sure.
but
Yeah.
certainly a good stretch and a good season for him. Great stretch for the Golden State Warriors. Curry going ahead and putting 50 on the Sacramento Kings. There was no lighting
Told
of the
ya.
beam in Game
Told
7,
ya.
but then the LA Lakers came to town
Uh-huh.
and stole Game 1 from the Golden State Warriors in a series that is causing rending of garments and gnashing of teeth in the Entchev household.
Oh, terrible.
Kamen, how are you feeling with this one? I know you're going to wax poetic about all the phenomenal players. I'm just going to jump in really quickly and say that I would have Warriors in 7. Even after losing Game 1, I'm still going to stand by Warriors in 7. But this is going to go back and forth, and this is where a little bit of an advantage in depth and youth for Golden State is going to be the key that separates them from the Lakers. That, and I don't think Anthony Davis is putting up 30 and 23 every single game.
All right. Breathe, Kamen. I don't know, Tom. I have a lot of stats. I have a lot of stuff written down, but I don't know what to do here. I mean, you know
I'm going to
me,
let Kamen cook on this one. I've said
uh,
my piece.
LeBron and Curry are my two favorite players of this last generation. They're my two favorite players. I mean, look, I love Jordan. I love D-Wade. I love Giannis. But, I mean, if these aren't my two favorite players of all time, they're probably in the top 3 along with MJ. I love these guys. They've both done so much for the game of basketball. Both these teams, as we said, I mean, I picked both teams to win their first round series. I was a little biased, sure, but not traditional 6 or 7 seeds. Tough, man. It's tough. I think it comes down to, which is ironic because since that trade at the deadline, the Lakers, to me, Tom, clearly play better defense than Golden State. No doubt about it. Golden State, better offensive team, but Lakers have some good offensive players too. A few weird numbers in game 1. The Warriors had 3 different guys make 6 threes or more. Steph, Clay, and Jordan Poole. The Lakers made 6 threes combined as a team and still won the game, which is crazy. Lakers have won 4 out of 5 now this season, counting the playoff game. You know, I've went back and forth on this so much because before the playoffs started, I had the Lakers in the Western Conference Finals beating the Warriors in round 2. Last week we're on the show and I said I'm leaning Warriors maybe now. I'm going to go with what I picked first. Lakers are going to win this series in 6 or 7, Tom. Getting game 1 was huge for them. Massive game 1 win. And they're just simply bigger. They're more athletic. They're bigger. Davis had 23 rebounds, 4 blocks. LeBron gets 11 rebounds, 3 blocks. I mean, I love what they did at the end of the game, by the way. They got the ball out of Curry's hands. They double teamed him, almost a triple team there, forced Jordan Poole to beat you. And Jordan Poole is not consistent enough to beat you enough of the time. Even Klay Thompson is kind of up and down, even more so now than he used to be. So they get the ball out of Curry's hands at the end. That is huge for the Lakers. Again, Curry is amazing. Warriors, I'm about 52% sure on the Lakers. Warriors can easily win this series, but I think actually the Lakers have a really, really good mix when it comes to age on the team. They have LeBron, Davis, the more experienced guys. Then they have D'Angelo Russell, who's more like in the middle, not young, not old. Then they have the young guys like Austin Reeves. They have some really good role players. Hachimura's really good. I don't necessarily agree that the Warriors have, per se, better depth or better youth. Maybe they should, but the young guys haven't been used as much for Golden State. And I don't know if Kerr goes to some of these young guys more. Can they just be thrown in there when they haven't played that much against the Kings in the first round? I don't know. I mean, it could go either way. I'll tell you this, though, Tom. This feels like, and I'll kind of get at this in the next segment with James Harden. LeBron James, to me, I think is closer to his prime than we realize. I'm not going to sit here and say LeBron is in his prime. He's 38. He's lost a half step, but I think people think he's lost a full step. I don't think he has. I think LeBron is, everything he does is calculated. He's super smart. You know, we talk about MVP. LeBron is almost as valuable, if not as valuable, as all those guys we talked about earlier. He plays when he has to. I think he loves having Austin Reeves playmaking a lot. I think he loves having D'Angelo Russell bringing the ball up. AD getting some touches down low. The offense doesn't have to run through LeBron James every time down the court. He's conserving energy. 21, 22, his playoff numbers are oddly down compared to his, close to 30 points per game this season. I think as the series gets deeper, LeBron's going to pick a spot. There's going to be a game in this series where we get a 40, 10, and 10 game from LeBron James. He knows exactly what he's doing. I think that the Lakers are rolling right now. They've been the best team since the All-Star break. I'm going to go Lakers in 6 or 7, but Golden State winning would not surprise me. I think it's going to be Lakers. If it goes to 7, Golden State may win. I think stealing that game 1 is huge. But at the same time, though, Tom, I think both of these teams are more than capable to win on the road. There's so many veteran players. They've won so many big road games. All this whole thing about Golden State on the road in the regular season. And everyone's saying it's not as easy to turn up in the playoffs. Well, they did. They got Andrew Wiggins back. They proved that playoff medal. They won 2 games in Sacramento, one of, if not the loudest arena in sports. So I don't know. This could go either way. I'm leaning Lakers. Either way, Tom, it's a win-win for me because I get to see Curry or LeBron play another round.
Absolutely. And then the next series, it's already 2-0. The Denver Nuggets winning both games at home by double digits. And now Chris Paul is listed as day-to-day. And I think an initial report had him missing games 3 to 5. But now he's listed as day-to-day, possibly a little bit of gamemanship or something along those lines. I've been with the Nuggets all season long. There was no way that I was going to be picking against them in the series. I know initially you preferred Suns, but then, we got some additional information in round 1. Suns not looking quite as crisp, quite as sharp. And we've seen that bear out in games 1 and 2, where the Nuggets, games are close for a little bit, but then they just kind of pull away and don't really let Phoenix get close, especially going into the fourth quarter down 3 and outscoring them 27-14 in the fourth quarter.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I probably would have picked Nuggets in like 6 or something like that. I think it could still get to that point, but if Chris Paul's going to be out, that might not be as significant as a loss for the Phoenix Suns as you might ordinarily think, simply because he's what, 37, 38, and he has not been playing particularly well this playoffs. Any chance, comment in your mind, that the Phoenix Suns can win the series, or is it Denver's got him in a hole and they're not going to let him out?
I mean, I'm picking Denver to win the series. The Suns do have a chance. I mean, they have Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. Those are two of the most streaky shooters, two of the best players in the game. Phoenix has a chance. I mean, anytime you have those two guys on your team, you have a legitimate
Yeah.
chance. But I am going to pick the Nuggets. A lot of this goes down to depth. Up 2-0 in the series, won by 18 in game one. They won by 10 in game two. The Suns led after one quarter in game one. Then they led at halftime in game two. But the story of this series is Nuggets have much more depth. Phoenix has no help off the bench. The bench shot, Tom, 2 of 16 and had 4 points in game two. Guys get tired as the game goes on. Nuggets down the stretch enjoyed a 17-8 run. The home court did help. Nuggets very good at home this year, 34-7. But for Phoenix to win this series, they got to get at least one road win. I'm not sure if that's going to happen. The players
Mhm.
building off that home court energy. The role players not playing as well on the road. The Suns don't have very good role players. And I've been a big fan of this guy's game throughout his whole career. Chris Paul is finally starting to slow down. Averaging 9.5 points and 5.5 assists this series. Both are well below his season averages, well below his career averages. He's still a very good player, but he's not quite the player he used to be. I do think they would still much rather have him than Cameron Payne or whoever is going to play point. But the injury is a concern. If CP3 is even more hurt, even less productive, that could hurt Phoenix even more. So I think the Suns are going to win a couple games, 1 or 2. They probably win 2. I think Nuggets in 6 seems reasonable. Could be 5.
Mhm.
But I don't. I mean, they're going to win at least a game. You have Durant and Booker. You're going to win at least a game.
Yeah.
It's not going to be a clean sweep. But I do think Denver has more depth, the better team. The Nuggets do win this series.
Yeah, I'm right there with you on that one. And a team where, like we mentioned a little bit earlier, injury not playing as big of a role, at least in game one. The Philadelphia 76ers, without a Joel Embiid, come back and defeat the Boston Celtics, who have demonstrated time and again that they are not able to close the door on opponents when they have a significant lead, a significant advantage. We saw this bite them a couple of times against the Atlanta Hawks. We saw that same problem rear its head in game one against the 76ers. I thought that this was a game that, with Joel Embiid definitely missing game one, we'll see about game two. You know, he's saying he'll play. Medical reports aren't as sure on that front. But to my mind, game one was absolutely at home without Joel Embiid, the biggest mismatch for you. That had to be one that the Boston Celtics won. Do you think that they can overcome that and still win this series, or do you think Philadelphia has stolen that one road game? They're going to be solid and even better once Joel Embiid comes back, and that it just might be the 76ers' time this season.
It is 100% the 76ers time, Tom. You know me, going into the season, going into the playoffs, actually picked this second round upset. I mean, upset. I don't even know if it's an upset, to be honest. I picked the
Hmm.
76ers to win this second round series before it started, and I'm going to stick with Philly. No reason why not to. I mean, by the way, Boston has no one to guard Embiid. No one's going to stop this man when he gets back, and he'll be healthy at some point this series. The only way that they
Hmm.
don't win is if he's really, really injured and Harden gets injured. But Philly's very capable of winning road games, 25-16 on the road. James Harden, 45 points in game one. That was huge. Huge to give him that rhythm, give him that confidence. And I was actually looking at the numbers. I was crunching James Harden stats, Tom. His field goal percentage, his 3-point percentage, his free throw percentage, his overall effective field goal percentages this year, a little bit higher than his career average. You watch this guy play, he can do this if he needs to. He knows, again, he knows that for this team to succeed in the regular season, maybe they're slightly better. And I do mean slightly better because, I mean, Harden could be the guy putting up 35 points. They would be almost as good if he was actually leading the team in scoring. I think he realizes that he's the better passer of him and Embiid, and he'll defer to Embiid because that makes the team flow better. But I don't think this is a case of James Harden past his prime time. I mean, look, you lose a little bit of step with each age, but I think we are way, 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 way closer to MVP level James Harden than anyone realizes. Led the league in assists, gets the job done. He's a very smart player. I think in my opinion, Tom, you'll disagree. But in my opinion, James Harden right now, and I know you'll disagree, but I think he's better than Jason Tatum. I think he's a better overall player. You take into account the passing, the way he runs the game. There really is not a player in the NBA who runs the game his way as much as James Harden does. So I think Philly's got the two best players in this series. Embiid number one, Harden number two for me. I think it's a really, really good team. Tyrese Maxey, by the way, who is Boston's third guy? Marcus Smart, Tyrese Maxey, a much better third option than Boston's third player as well. I think Philadelphia has the better team. I think talent-wise, they're better. They're definitely, I think, a better team talent-wise. I think they're going to win this series. And I don't know, something about Boston this year rubs me the wrong way. I didn't really like the way they played against Atlanta. I mean, it's not going to be a sweep or anything. That's crazy, but this may be a Philly in 5 or 6. If it's 6, a comfortable 6. Just my gut feeling tells me, Tom, I don't think it's going to be super close. You're talking about the Celtics coming back and winning. I'm ready to bury the Boston Celtics. Philadelphia 76ers, I guarantee it, are winning this series, Tom Casselman.
Well, I mean, James Harden certainly played a phenomenal game one, but I'm not going to go up there and say, presently constituting the NBA that he's better than Jason Tatum is. I mean, he's the past couple of seasons, James Harden has had flashes of being amazing, but he's also had stretches where he just isn't very good at all. And that's kind of a product of the fact that he doesn't have as much natural athleticism as a lot of these other guys do, so that when there's a decline in his game, it's a little bit more stark of a contrast between when he's on and when he's not. You look pretty quick off the dribble.
Look pretty quick. Boston couldn't guard him.
But if you look at, like, say, his last 10 games, over his last 10 games, he's averaging 16.5 points per game, which means, he has some really good ones, but he also has a couple of clunkers as well.
That's
mostly,
totally fine.
It's
for mostly because of a rhythm, Tom, and because he defers to his teammates. It's not that he's shooting like 3 for 20 consistently. He's shooting
43.9% from the field over the last 10. Like, hot and cold. Like, I'm not saying that's a bad thing.
He takes a lot of threes, though. Effective percentage a little better.
Level. It's not the same level as Jason Tatum right now.
I think he's better. I think everyone's selling James Harden. This is the James Harden playoff tour. He'll prove everyone wrong, man.
We'll see. I mean, I'm still going to go Boston in 7. I think that it's disappointing that the Celtics haven't taken any sort of lessons learned from making a trip to the NBA Finals last season, playing against a franchise in the Golden State Warriors that has been there, has done that multiple times, and yet there seems to be that missing edge with the Celtics, and I don't necessarily know what it is. I don't know why they can't seem to find the switch to close things out when it comes down to crunch time in games. So, I mean, it's a long series. I think it's going to go 7, no matter which team ends up winning. I mean, these teams are really evenly matched. Only a couple games separating them in the regular season and in the standings. So I'm going to go with the Celtics on this one, but with each game, I'm less and less convinced and convicted in that assertion that I've had since the preseason.
You'll feel different after tonight. Another Philly special tonight. You'll feel different.
We will certainly see. That brings us to the last second round matchup for us to be discussing. We've got the Knicks tying it up at a game apiece. No Jimmy Butler for the Miami Heat. So the Heat, probably one of, if not the most dangerous 8 seeds in NBA history, or at least in the modern playoff history.
Easily.
Are we going to see the Heat in the Eastern Conference Finals, Jimmy Butler playoff time, or could this be Tom Thibodeau breaking through with a troika of really solid players who aren't necessarily stars in RJ Barrett, Julius Randle, Jalen Brunson, guys who I'd say are really good NBA players, maybe even are stars, but aren't superstars, if that translates.
First off, I think Julius Randle and Jalen Brunson are very, very close to that superstar level, like a second tier superstar. I'm not saying
Hmm.
they're top 10, but they're right in that like 11 to 20 range. I mean, I wouldn't be upset if you called them a superstar. I also wouldn't be upset if you didn't call them a superstar. They're right on that edge. I think they're better than you or a lot of people give them credit for, though. That's for sure. With that said, this really goes down to Jimmy Butler's health. If Jimmy Butler is even like 80, 90%, if he's close to a healthy, the Heat are going to win the series. I mean, look, they almost won game 2 without him. It was a close game. They lost by 6. They were leading at one point in the fourth quarter. I mean, Miami these guys, it's next man up. You never know who's going to step up. Could be Max Strus one day, Gabe Vincent another, Duncan Robinson coming out of nowhere lately, knocking down threes. That's just a team that's well coached. Eric Spoelstra, well led by Jimmy Butler. Just like a team that really plays better in the playoffs. I mean, they're not an 8 seed. They had a lot of injuries, the 4th most injuries in the NBA. If Jimmy Butler is healthy, they should win this series. They have the best player in the series. I'll call Jimmy Butler a superstar. He's a superstar,
Oh, yeah.
Tom. I think he's proved that. So if he is seriously injured, then the Knicks will win the series. I know it sounds like a no-duh, cop-out answer, but I'm going to bank on Jimmy Butler being close to healthy. I'm going to hope for the best in his injury case, and I'm going to pick Miami Heat to win this series. I mean, they stole a game on the road, but these guys can win on the road. It doesn't even matter who has
Mhm.
the home court. I mean, even if the Knicks win one of the next 2 and it's 2-2, you saw what they did in Milwaukee. They don't care. These guys can win in any environment. So Miami Heat as an 8 seed, going to make the Eastern Conference Finals. Yes, sir.
Just for fun, I'll go opposite you with the New York Knicks. You know, just because I really like Tom Thibodeau. I know that he rubs people the wrong way. He kind of chaps a lot of hides when he gets to a particular place because of how maniacal he is with running a basketball team. But he's got this perfect storm where it's a bell curve with Tom Thibodeau and the players who love playing for him. You got guys like Jimmy Butler who are on the ascent, young, hungry guys who really want to work for it. And you have a team like that with Brunson, RJ Barrett, and Julius Randle, all guys who are in their mids approaching prime 20s. It's when you start getting to like the little bit older superstars who say, "Hey, I need a little bit of a rest." And Tom Thibodeau says, "No, you don't. I've been coaching for the past however many years. I can rattle off a bunch of guys who were superstar players that played every game, that didn't take practices off." And that's where teams start to get rubbed a little bit the wrong way and saying, "Hey, we want some load management. We'd like to ease off the pedal a little bit." And Tom Thibodeau does not have that downshift in in his
Sure.
gearbox. So I really like him. I don't really like the Knicks per se, but for his sake, I want to see him have success. I'm going to go with the Knicks in 7 on this one. But of course, it wouldn't surprise me either way. And no matter who wins this series, they are going to absolutely give all the hands in the Eastern Conference Finals. I know Boston, Philadelphia, whoever wins that series is going to be the presumptive favorite to represent the Eastern Conference. But neither of these teams are going to let that go lightly
No,
and kind
agreed.
of bow in respect to overall seeding. So I think it's going to be a fun series. I think it's going to be a grindy series because these teams both can go on cold streaks where they don't really score and it's all defense and bricks, but certainly will be immensely enjoyable to watch if you're into that sort of aesthetic.
Sure.
Betting locks of the week. Common, how'd we do?
Uh, Tom, again, it's the curse of this
We've been
show,
better.
man. I I've had an amazing betting week, amazing betting month. I won like 8 bets in a row at one point. Then we get to this show and Again, 1-2 week this weekend. I mean, gosh, parlays galore. Miami Heat,
Mhm.
Golden State Warriors, game 7. I had Cubs and Reds. I mean, I've been on fire betting, man. And when just on this show, it's the curse of the show. If I pick it on the show, it doesn't happen. If I pick outside the show, it happens.
Mhm.
1-2 week for me this last week. I had the Lakers Grizzlies under 222.5 in game 5. That was correct. 116.99 Grizzlies, so 215 points. I had the Cavs minus 5.5 over the Knicks. That did not work out. Knicks winning outright. This one was close. Curry over 32.5 points in game 5. He had 31. Really, really bad 3-point shooting day for Curry. I think he made like his first 2 or 2 of his first 3. Then he missed like 7 or 8 threes in a row. Had one of those threes go down, Tom, and like 3 of them just rimmed in and out, he would have hit the over. So go figure on that one. Tom, you were 1-2. Will Anderson, first defensive player drafted at plus 120. You were correct. He was taken 3rd overall, I believe, by the Texans. Cowboys draft a tight end with their first pick, plus money Casselman. That was not true. I think they went defensive tackle, and you had under 8.5 players drafted for the Big Ten, and there was 9. I think it was, you were telling me the same pick. It was the Michigan defensive tackle that lost you 2 bets, essentially.
Pretty much, which might be a first where one thing causes 2 things to go wrong on the betting front. So should have had a little bit more faith in that CJ Stroud second quarterback take, and that was plus 225. Really juicy if you went that route. So for this week on Betting Locks of the Week, I am going to start with Lakers and Warriors. Give me under 227.5 on that one. Only one day off in between games. Both these teams a little bit older. Both these teams, Warriors, good defensive efficiency at home. Lakers, really strong defense at home. But the Lakers have had some stretches where they're not necessarily clicking on offense. This is a pretty high point total. I think they just cleared 228 in the last game. I think they go under 227.5 in game 2 of the series. Give me the Nuggets plus 3.5 against the Phoenix Suns. Maybe Phoenix ekes out a victory in this one without Chris Paul in the lineup, where Suns are already really, really short on depth. Nuggets, I think, are well capable of withstanding that. And then give me Devin Booker over 30.5 points. He was at 27 in game 1, and he was at 39 in game 2, I want to say. Give me over 30.5 on him. 3 days off between games. So plenty of time to get rested up. Without Chris Paul potentially in the lineup, Devin Booker is going to have to take on even more of a scoring responsibility, running the offense, and he's really good at getting to a spot. So that's a player prop that I feel pretty good about in game 3 of this series.
The Casselman player props are back, baby!
Watch, he's going to now miss. He's going to miss a shot that would take him over 30.5 points, and it will be a missed shot that would sink the Nuggets plus 3.5 or something like that. I don't know.
That's how it's going to work. That's usually how it goes, man. All right, so I checked my phone to make sure I get some updated lines. I'm going to hit you with the soccer one first because this game starts in exactly 3 minutes. So we're going to get this in on the nick of time. Man City, West Ham, over 3.5 goals at plus 115. Man City's cruising, just put 4 goals past Arsenal last week. West Ham, Tom, just lost 4-3 against Crystal Palace. So the better team is heating up. The lesser team's defense not playing great lately. Makes for a lot of Man City goals. I know they have a lot of games coming up. Champions League, FA Cup final, EPL league race heating up, but I think this team is focused. Feels like a 3-1 win. West Ham scoring a lot recently as well, though, so maybe 3-2. Feel like a lot of goals coming in the soccer game that's about to kick off here. Going to the NBA, I got actually a better line than what I wrote down originally. It's now shifted to plus 8. Philadelphia 76ers plus 8 in game 2. Just this line does not make a lot of sense to me, Tom. They won game 1 outright. Embiid might play. They're saying he's going to play. I mean, 8 points is a lot. 8 points is a lot. Tyrese Maxey looked really good game one. James Harden, 45 points in game one. You mentioned the stats. Philly was 9-5 without Embiid this season. Obviously, really good with him as well. This game could go either way. I think right now we're seeing the road teams do a lot better in playoffs in all sports. And I think we're seeing sort of like an urgency. I think in the past, we've kind of had this like complacency, like you win game one, then you'll give them game two, right? That type of sort of feel. It just feels that way sometimes, right? Does not feel that way to me. It feels like Philly is looking for blood here. They've had so many injuries to their stars in recent years. They want to end this series as quickly as they can. I'm very torn on who's going to win outright. Boston might win this game outright because they're at home. They need it. But 8 points? That's a lot of points for a team that already won game one on the road. One of the best road records in the league. Philadelphia has been great on the road all season. They've taken down Boston on the road. They've taken down Milwaukee on the road. I think the Sixers covered tonight. And I'm going to roll with James Harden, man. This is a little bit low to me. Over 21.5 points at -110. This man just put up 45, Tom. Talk about a guy who's in rhythm. He's got to score just half of that, and we'll cover. And it's like people act like James Harden doesn't score anymore. I mean, he led the league in assists. He's not a scorer. He averaged about 21 points per game this season when he was primarily a point guard. I mean, we're talking like that's what Magic would do. You get 18, 19, 20 points, get 11, 12 assists, and, people are like, oh, my God, that's a lot of points for a point guard. So that's really only 1 point more than his season average, which I think you can get no problem. That's actually one that I feel really good about. Harden over 21.5 points. So rolling with Philly tonight to cover. Harden and Man City with a whole bunch of goals. Let's go.
Sounds good. Trivia time.
Yeah, I got a trivia question for you. Involves, of course, Curry and LeBron. This is why, Tom, I know we're a little bit short on time. Some of us have work coming up here, but I can't not get a Curry and LeBron trivia question in. So they have combined for the second most regular season points by opposing players entering a playoff series. 60,364 regular season points. What duo had the most combined points when they met in the playoffs? So hopefully that makes sense. Like two players with the most combined points in the regular season meeting in a playoff series. This is the second most combined points of all time.
And it's the points that they scored in that season, not career, correct?
No, career. This is career points.
Oh, career.
Career points. Yeah, hopefully that made sense. So most career points by two players who met in a playoff series. Second most ever for LeBron and Curry. Over 60,000. That's a lot of points. Holy cow.
So I'll start with Michael Jordan, Karl Malone.
Nope.
Or is that too early in their careers?
No, I mean, it's pretty late in their careers. They're probably up there, but no, not Jordan and Karl Malone.
Okay. I mean, I'm inclined to say like Hakeem Olajuwon, or not Hakeem, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, because he's got the most points.
Yeah. There wasn't another guy in his era. It's not Kareem. I'll just save you the time because you're thinking a lot.
Okay.
I'm going to give you a clue here that's going to help you just eliminate old school eras. Because this is a very, very, very modern matchup. Very modern.
Oh, okay. So I'll go with, let's see, not LeBron and Curry. I'm going to say LeBron is one.
LeBron is one. I'll go ahead and give you that. So a guy that LeBron's met in the playoffs more recently.
Would it be LeBron and KD? KD scores a lot.
He does. But so this is at the time that they met. So they haven't met in the playoffs in quite a bit. They'll probably meet and they'll break that record at some point in the next couple of years, but it's at the time of the
At the
meeting, if
time
that
that they
makes
meet.
sense. So what their career point total was at the time they met. I knew you were going to
So
guess Durant.
LeBron,
That's a really good guess. They haven't played in the
yes. So
playoffs in quite a while, those two. I think it was what the Warriors and Cavs final,
yeah,
right?
that was a couple years back. Okay,
That was
so
more than a
LeBron,
couple years back.
who's he been matching up with that would also have a ton of scoring?
So when they last matched up, which is again
Hmm.
is very recent, I'll even go ahead and say more recent than LeBron and Durant. The guy that he played against at the time of the matchup was past his prime.
Oh, okay.
Well past his prime, probably safe to say that.
Well past his prime. LeBron
There's another clue I
would be
can give
LeBron
you.
and Melo.
It is LeBron
Same
and
draft.
Melo.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Wow. When did they meet up last
What
against each other?
2020. Lakers Blazers, first round of the playoffs, 2020.
Oh,
It was a bubble year, I think.
forgot about that. Yeah, that was, yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. Because I knew Melo played on the Lakers for a little bit too.
He did. Yep.
I forgot that
That was
I
another
forgot
clue
about
I
the
was going to give
Blazer
you. A former teammate of LeBron's, but I thought that might give it
year.
away.
Ah,
So
not bad.
good stuff. Statements. What you got, Tom?
Well, my big statement was, the Joel Embiid not MVP, but there's something that irks me a little bit about how the NBA hands out some of its titles. The scoring title. For the second year in a row, Joel Embiid has won the scoring title in the NBA, despite not leading the NBA in scoring. For whatever reason, the NBA decides to determine the scoring title by the most points per game minimum, a certain number of games, as opposed to, who scored the most points, period,
Who
which I
was it?
think is probably a more accurate Jason Tatum.
Of
Um,
course. Okay.
but if you look at, the
Of
last
course.
couple of seasons, Joel Embiid, again, last year won the scoring title, where it was actually Trae Young who scored the most points in the NBA. If you go back a couple years ago, Steph Curry, it matched up where he had the most points per game and the most total points. And you see that kind of repeat itself a little bit. James Harden has done it, where he's gotten both. I mean, in my opinion, it's ridiculous that we're doing this on a per game basis. I know it's a minor thing to kind of quibble about, but I think the scoring title should go to the person who scored the most points. In baseball, we didn't judge Aaron Judge on how many home runs he hit per game. It was how many home runs did he hit? Can you tell me, Kamen, how many touchdown passes Patrick Mahomes threw per game in his MVP season? No, because that's not
About
the number
three.
that we used to judge. Like, that's not the number we used to judge in any
Sure.
sport
Sure.
except for basketball for whatever reason. And for folks who want to use the per game scoring, I think you will all be very, very happy to know that LeBron James is not the all-time leading scorer. It's actually Michael Jordan, because we're going to go on a per game basis. It's absolutely ridiculous that
That's a
for
good
the
point.
longevity
No.
conversation, we
Yeah.
talk about total everything, but yet when it comes to this regular season title, and it's something that players actually do care about quite a bit. I mean, it's a little bit of a data reference, but David Robinson went out and scored
Shaq
71
and
points in the
David.
season finale just so he could top Shaq in
Yep.
that regard.
Uh-huh.
So I think it's ridiculous that that's how they hand out the scoring title. I know it's a different era of the NBA, but guess what? If you want the scoring title so damn bad, maybe don't take as many days off. Maybe don't go for so much load management. Actually be there for every single game. Actually put the ball in the hoop. This isn't an efficiency metric. This is a total number metric.
Yeah, I kind of like that. I mean, I'm a little torn because obviously, like, the guy plays 72 games and one plays 71. One averages a little more points, but the other gets a little more total. It gets messy, but overall, I kind of agree, Tom. I mean, in soccer, they do the golden boot to the guy who scores the most total goals, not the one who scored the most goals per game. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Basketball's the only sport that does
I
that.
kind of like that, Tom. I kind of like that. That's not a bad idea, Mr. Casselman. I'm going to go to my statement of the week. This is not incredibly bold. It's not incredibly surprising. But I'm going to guarantee 76ers make the NBA Finals. To be honest with you, Tom, I don't like Joel Embiid's personality. I don't like James Harden's personality. I by no means am a big fan of either guy personally, but I'm a big fan of what they do on the court. I'm a big fan of the team they have. I really like Tyrese Maxey. I'm not the biggest Celtics guy, and let's be honest, the Heat and Knicks, not the hardest teams to beat in the finals or the Eastern Conference Finals for the 76ers. So I think Philadelphia finally gets in the finals this year. I think they take down Boston, take down probably Miami, maybe, who knows? But I think Philadelphia's got the best talent in the Eastern Conference. And finally, their talent will prevail this year. Philly makes the NBA Finals. I'm not ready to say they win it, but I think they make it this year. Philadelphia 76ers in the NBA Finals.
It would be fun to see Jokic and Embiid against each other for 7 games, possibly 7 games.
Could
That'd be a
also
ton
be
of
fun
fun.
to see LeBron against Harden and Embiid too, Tom. Or maybe Curry.
Too bad that's not going to happen, though.
That could happen, Tom Casselman. Kind of reminds me of like Messi is amazing and he was amazing at the World Cup, but his teammates were better. They helped him more than ever. LeBron is still amazing, maybe not quite as good as he always was, but his teammates now all of a sudden helping him more than ever. Kind of that like Peyton Manning past his prime Broncos championship team. It's kind of like all those years that he probably should have won, he didn't because of lack of help. It's starting to feel kind of spooky that way for the Lakers. It's kind of LeBron didn't get any NBA MVP votes. Everyone's ready to proclaim Davis as the guy on the team, which may or may not be true. I would still take LeBron, I think, personally, as the best overall player on the Lakers. It's still LeBron's team, but it does feel kind of like a little spooky. LeBron getting that 5th ring, Tom Casselman. I don't know. That's kind of the way I'm leaning there, but we will see what happens. We'll talk more about the playoffs next week. Have a great show. Have a great day, guys. Tom, have a great day. It was a great show, I meant to say, but hopefully everyone watching and listening, thank you so much, and we'll see you guys soon.